Hello everyone, we have another second round preview to cover for our 2022 playoff preview. So, before we start between the Flames and the Oilers matchup, please make sure to subscribe to my channel if you are new and you want to see more of my hockey content. Now let's get started. And we have to talk about the fact that this is the first Battle of Alberta we've seen as fans since 1991. I was 9 years away from being born, so it's been a minute, but the rivalry has still thrived through these two teams as they have been able to definitely have some bad blood over the years, even though they haven't seen each other a lot in the postseason. So, how did these two teams get here? Well, for the Flames, they have been able to have skill and some grit to their game as they finished third in the West thanks to Minnesota leapfrogging them with a late season surge, but they did still win their first division title since 2019 and managed to escape the first round in overtime against Dallas, who took a very, very long time to kind of finish them off thanks to Jake Ottinger, and they just would not let the series go by any means. Basically, Jake was just a threat in net. As for Edmonton, they pieced together a very good season to finish second in the Pacific Division, and they were right behind the Flames, of course, in the Pacific, and won a Game 7 of their own by a score of 2-0 in the first round against the Los Angeles Kings. That was a really fun series, some way, some not. I think the crazy thing there was sometimes the Oilers would just blow out the Kings, and it was fun. It was a weird fun, though. So, what are some of the storylines, narratives, factors, stuff like that we should expect in this series, in this matchup? Well, a big one is going to be centered around the star player for Edmonton, or one of the star players for Edmonton, that being Leon Draisaitl, and his health for the series. Now, I'm sure some of you were expecting me to say Connor McDavid when I said star Edmonton player. Don't worry, we'll talk about him later, because of course he is the star of the show, but this is another big player for Edmonton, as Leon will be dealing with what appears to be, or what is said to be, a high ankle sprain. You never know, because it seems like they always lie about what these injuries are a lot of times and the severity of it. But if he is dealing with a high ankle sprain, well, it's going to be very painful to play on that high ankle sprain. It can be done. If you've ever had an ankle sprain, you know it doesn't feel good, but with a lot of tape, you're able to get through it. And hockey players are super tough. I mean, I know a lot of athletes will be like, oh, our sport's the toughest. If you heard about what Matt Dimba went through to play in round one, you would realize that, there would be very few sports you could say there's competition. I'm sure there are other sports, but hockey players are kind of in that top tier where they have to deal with it and just play. But I think we'll still see the German Gretzky play. It's just going to depend on how well he's able to play and how he's going to deal with that ankle. And it's going to be a key piece for him to be a factor in the series. He is a big driving force of Edmonton's offense, and should he miss any time, the Oilers would lose a guy that scored 19% of their goals in the regular season for them, while also netting 5 in the first round. Luckily for the Oilers, again, it seems like he will play through the pain, and he will likely have an impact on this series offensively, and I expect a lot of that to be on the power play. But we'll have to see how that goes, see if the Flames will be able to neutralize him. Although I am curious to see, another thing here is whether or not they're going to put him on a line with McDavid for the majority of the time in the series, or try to as much as possible, giving them a very unreal line there to score off of. But kind of the flip side of that is, when you put him there, it really does take away from having Draisaitl on another line, and you would like to have as much dangerous line potential, I guess you want to say, as possible. But really, it's one of those things where if you're not getting results, you might have to play with the lines a little bit, and I think we'll get a little bit of mix of both. It would be very weird to not see him play at all with McDavid in this series, but also I think it'd be really weird to see him only play with McDavid, and it's just basically impossible with how you play minutes. But we'll have to see. Another storyline we will have to watch out for is whether or not the Flames scoring issues will continue. Calgary already had some scoring depth issues heading into the playoffs, but when their top name players weren't able to perform, at least at the rate you'd like, it became a huge issue against Dallas. Now, I don't expect Mike Smith to do what Jake Ottinger did in the first round, but the Flames also do need to get some better shots too. I'm not downplaying what Jake did for Dallas, but there were some games where Calgary just kept firing at Jake's chest, and it was not like they were intentionally doing it. It would be they just tried to get a one-timer off, and they just kept hitting him right there in the chest, and it was like, obviously you're not going to score a lot of goals that way, and they just weren't able to get the angle of the shots that they wanted. But a positive thing for them is that while they didn't have a lot of goals, they weren't able to just break through like you'd like. They had an expected goals for per 60 of 4, which was nearly double the rate of the goals for per 60 they actually scored at 2.07. So they basically should have scored at double the rate, but goaltenders will be goalies, and they will do special things, especially come playoff time. And the Flames are still in a very good position. They were a team that owned shots for percentage throughout the year. They've really just put it to Dallas as well in that category in a lot of ways. So I'd expect them to have more shots in this series than Edmonton. And theoretically, you would imagine more opportunities to score because of that, but you never know. But a big thing here for them is if their shooting percentage can go back to where it was during the regular season, which was at 10%. Some teams are able to get higher looks in it or a higher rate of scoring, but if they could get it back to there, that'd be money right there, because their first round shooting percentage was 5.23, nearly halved of their shooting percentage, which was the worst of any team in round one. And if they get that thing rolling and they're able to not just, put up 60 shots and get 3 goals in, they're going to be fun. As for my final topic, I wanted to talk about whether or not Connor McDavid will have to play at an otherworldly level if Edmonton wants to win this series. My answer is kind of weird. It's yes and no, and I'll tell you why. McDavid undoubtedly is a player with all-time talent. I mean, this guy is just great. We all know it, and he's been on a team that's kind of lacked some depth during his career. There's been different years, but I think there's a lack of depth there. However, the Oilers have been working on adding pieces to the roster to try to make it less of a one-man or two-man show. So I think that it might be better than some years past, and I would imagine Connor wouldn't have to put up 20-some points in a series. You never know, but is Connor going to have to be his team's X factor? Yes. So it's kind of one of those things where the depth should help a little bit more, but he's still going to have to be probably the biggest factor of his team in the series. And it's good, though, too, because he had 14 points in 7 games against the Kings and had an incredible game score average for the series. Game score will take certain stats. I believe it's all the stats that you track in a traditional game or whatever. I'd have to look into it a little bit more, but it averages out what your game score is of your value, and he had a value that was very, very good. The best game score average this season, I believe, for the regular season was 2 something by Austin Matthews, and it was like a low 2. But for Connor McDavid, it was like 3 for the playoff series against LA, so that was huge. And it was very good for him, as obviously he was able to put up a big series there. But of course, he's going to have some help from his other guys. So yeah, he's going to be the X Factor, but you need an X Factor 3.0, 4.0, as I imagine Draisaitl would be. The second man up, you'd expect to have a big series. But yeah, against a team like Calgary that can roll out multiple stout defensive lines, you're going to need to have more than McDavid show up for this team if they're going to move on to the conference finals. And it looks like they will try to make that move, that push back there for the first time since 2017. So, having said all this, I am making my pick, and I will be picking the Calgary Flames in 7. The Flames hold a lot of edges in this series, and I do think that the star power kind of favors Edmonton, and their blue line, I think, is something that really surprised me. There were certain pairings I didn't expect to play very well, but they've been able to do better than I expected, which is huge for this series. And I think that for Edmonton, their star power plus their side casts could be a little bit of an issue for Calgary, especially if the scoring was happen again. And I think going back to a blue line, something we could see here for Calgary is that they're going to have to deal with some injuries to their blue liners, that I could see some problems coming out of that. Daryl Sutter's defensemen can have and will play some serious minutes, and tired legs don't exactly mean good results against a guy like Connor McDavid, who is quick, who is able to maneuver very well to position himself in very favorable spots, and to be very just good all around with the puck. So I'm going to have to see. Also, Mike Smith, we didn't talk about goalies as much in this, which is kind of weird for me, but I was just focused on some other things. Mike Smith is not as bad as everyone makes him out to be. Not saying he's a Vezina favorite or anything, but as of late, he's had some decent moments, and obviously Jacob Markstrom holds that edge for goalie in this series. But if Mike Smith can kind of hang on what he does where he's on his game, then the Oilers are going to be in a really good spot here to try to win this series. We'll have to see how it goes, but I do think Calgary should be in a better position. Either way, It's going to be fun. Battle of Alberta, so I have to see how it goes. But now it's time to hear who you'd pick and how many games. Let me know down below in the comments. Also, don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more content from me. Everybody stay safe, have a great night, and you go off hockey, alright? Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.